Hey guys, Kaylin and Riley, we're back. The last video of this series of simplifying expressions. And we're going to talk about the distributive property. We're going to start it off with talking about if I had this piece of wood that was 5 by 12. So if I had a piece of wood that was 5 by 12, let's say it didn't fit into my car. Okay, so I brought it back to Home Depot and I said, you know what, let's cut it. Let's cut it into, instead of all the way across being 12, let's do a piece of 12 and then 2. So 5 by 12, that's really the same thing as a 5 by 10 plus 2. Okay? And if I found the area of it, it should be the same, right? So the area of a 5 by 12 board, 5 times 12 is 60. That should be the same thing as if I found the area of this piece plus the area of this piece. So let's try it. The area of this piece is 5 by 10. Whoops. I'm ahead of myself. That's 50. The area of this piece, 5 by 2, that's 10. 50 plus 10, that's 60. Let's see how that looks on the distributive property. The distributive property says that when I have a number outside parentheses of 2 terms on the inside, if I multiply it to each of the terms, so 5 times 10 plus 5 times 2, then those expressions should be equal. 50 plus 10, that's 60. That is the same thing as 5 times 12. So we can see it with area, the distributive property works. But what happens if, instead of 10, we say it's x? So this time, I don't know what the length of wood is going to be. So I'm going to erase this, and let's make an example using x. So 5, and instead I'm saying, you know what? I don't know the length of my wood, and let's keep this 2. But if I want to find the area of it, I'm still going to multiply length, or let's say width times the length, I'm still going to multiply. And using the same concept, this area right here, 5 times x, plus this area right here, should give me the area of the whole thing. And the distributive property says this. However many terms are on the inside, that's how many terms I'm going to get out. Okay, and the number that's touching the parentheses, that's the number that's being distributed. Okay, so 5 is going to get distributed to each of my terms on the inside. So 5 times x plus 5 times 2. Okay, so 5x plus 10. So essentially, visually, the area of this whole thing is 5x plus 10 because we don't know what x is. So the distributive property, how it works, the number that's touching the parentheses can be distributed. It can be multiplied to each of the terms on the inside. And what's going to happen is, however many terms you have on the inside, that's how many terms you're going to get out. And when we talk about simplifying expressions in math, 2 conditions have to happen. 1, you have to get rid of parentheses. 2, you got to combine like terms. So we use the distributive property to get rid of parentheses, which we did right here. And then next, if there are like terms, we're going to combine them. So let's do some examples. Okay, so if I have 4 times 6 plus x, and I'm asked to simplify this. Simplifying this means I have to get rid of parentheses using the distributive property. If there's anything to combine at the end, I will. So, however many terms are on the inside, that's how many terms are going to come out. The number that's touching the parentheses, that's what's being distributed. So 4 times each of my terms. Okay, so 4 is getting multiplied to a positive 6. 4 is also getting multiplied to a positive x. Notice that I kept that plus sign when I circled it, because sometimes you're going to have a minus. And when you multiply it, you want to make sure that you're multiplying with a negative number here. I also didn't determine yet if I'm adding or subtracting. I'm going to wait till I multiply to figure that out. So now I'm going to go ahead and multiply out what I can. So 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times x is 4x. So when you have a number with parentheses x, just write it as 4x. So I can't combine these. They're not like terms. So that's my final answer. Actually, let's make it easier. Let's start off with an easier one. Okay, so the distributive property doesn't always have to be positive. Your number doesn't always have to be to the left. So again, using this technique, however many terms are on the inside, that's how many terms are going to come out. Okay, the number that's being distributed is the number that's touching the parentheses. That's the 9. So I'm going to set up my problem. 9 times my 2 terms. What are the 2 terms? They're the ones on the inside. So I have a positive v, and I have a negative 4. Okay, now that I've set up the problem, I'm going to go ahead and multiply each term. 9 times v can just be written as 9v. Positive 9 times a negative 4, they're a pair, they disagree, that's going to give me a negative 28. So I wait till after I've multiplied to figure out what's going to combine my terms. And when you do the distributive property, you're always going to combine your terms by either addition or subtraction. Okay, and again, I can't combine these because they're not like terms. The only way these could be combined is if they both had just a v or something like that. Okay, so the next one, I have negative 6 multiplied to negative b minus 2y plus 5. Okay, so my rule, however many terms are on the inside, that's how many terms are going to come out. The negative 6 is what's being distributed. So I'm going to set that up. Okay, and what it's distributing to, so let me use a different color for that. My negative 6 is being distributed to a negative v. It's being distributed to a negative 2y. And it's being distributed to a positive 5. Okay, and I didn't put the plus sign, but I did that just so I know, bring it down, it's going to be a positive number. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply each of those pairs. Okay, negative times a negative gives me a positive 6v. Negative times a negative gives me a positive 12y. A negative times a positive gives me a negative. Okay? The last thing I want to do is see if there's any like terms. I see a v, a y, and a number. V's are not the same as y's, they're not the same as numbers, there's no like terms, so that's my final answer. Alright, I got 2 more examples. Okay, hopefully we'll have enough room. Negative 2, 3x minus y plus 3 negative 7y minus 7x. Alright, let's move this guy over a little bit. Okay, so in this example, I have two different pieces that are being distributed. Here, I have a negative 2 being distributed to these two numbers, and then over here I have a 3 being distributed to these two numbers. So if it helps, we'll kind of draw a little squiggle down the middle because these are unrelated until the end. So let's start with this problem over here, or this part of the problem. Okay, 2 terms on the inside means I'm going to come up with 2 terms on the outside. Okay, the negative 2 is being distributed. Okay, and it's being distributed to a positive 3x, and it's being distributed to a negative y. Alright, so now I'm going to multiply together. A negative times a positive gives me a negative 6x. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. Okay, so I'm all done with the left-hand side. I guess I can get rid of that squiggle for right now. And now I'm going to do this portion over here. So 2 terms on the inside means I'm going to end up with 2 terms on the outside. What's wrong? There you go. And then my 3 is what's being distributed to each of those. Okay, so I'm going to set that up. So 3 is being distributed. It's being distributed to a negative 7y, and it's being distributed to a negative 7x. Alright, so now that I've done the distribution, let's go ahead and multiply. 3 times a negative 7, they disagree, that's a negative 21y. 3 times negative 7x gives me a negative 21x. So we talked about the rules for simplifying expressions. 1, I got to get rid of the parentheses, these types of parentheses, by using the distribution property. We did that. Now I got to combine like terms. Just like we did in the last video talking about combining like terms, I'm going to rewrite it so that my like terms are next to each other. So I see that we have a negative 6x. I also see that we have a negative 21x. I can also see that we have a positive 2y, and I can see that we have a minus or negative 21y. Okay, so I want to add those like terms together. So how many x's do I have? Negative 6 minus 21, integer rules. When I'm adding or subtracting, same signs, add together. Keep the sign. So I have negative 27 x's. How many y's do I have? I have 2, and I have negative 21. When I'm adding or subtracting, different signs, subtract. Take side of the bigger one, I have negative 19 y's. Okay? I also like to make it alphabetical. Standard form again, alphabetical keeps it nice. Okay, so that's my final answer. Okay, so we're going to do one more. Okay, so what happens if you have a distribution in the middle of your problem? Okay, so we've got 6x minus 2, 7y minus 5x plus 5y. Okay, so I'm going to show blue where we have the distribution. So this 6x minus has really nothing to do with my distribution in the middle. neither does this 5y, okay? They're kind of like freeloaders just coming along for the ride right now. The thing that is being distributed is this 2. I chose to bring this down as subtraction. I could have chosen to see this as a -2, and if I had, I would have just circled to show I'm using it as a -2, but I'm just going to do it as a 2. Okay, so I'm going to minus, actually, you know what? Why don't I make this simpler? So why don't we do this? I'm going to show this, that we're going to use this as a -2, so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I circle that as a -2, that means that when I do my distribution, so here's my 2 terms, I'm bringing -2 along for the ride in both cases. Okay? And -2 is being distributed to a positive 7y, and it's being distributed to a negative 5x. Okay? So I'm going to bring down my 6x. I have a -2 times a positive 7, so that's going to give me a negative 14y. I have a -2 times a negative 5, that's going to give me a 10x. And I'm bringing down that 5y that we didn't use earlier. Alright, so we did the distribution. Now I have to combine like terms. So again, I'm going to rewrite the like terms that are next, or I'm going to write them next to each other. The 6x with a positive 10x. I also see that I have a negative 14y, and I have a positive 5y. Okay, so how many x's do I have all together? Well, I have 6 of them here and 10 of them here, so altogether I have 16 x's. How many y's do I have? Well, I have negative 14 over here, and I have 5 over here, so altogether I have negative 9 of them. So our final answer is 16x minus 9y. So thank you for watching the videos. I hope these helped. I hope you watched the whole series, and I hope to see you next time, and I hope you're enjoying this. Alright, bye. GoPro, stop recording.